My name is Daniel Weinmann, and I'm a founder and CEO at Seasoned. And at Seasoned, we're a dev shop building great apps with Remix. We also have a booth right around the corner, so if you haven't gone there yet, please come chat. We are totally in love with Remix and have a lot of engineers to geek out about Remix nonstop. And I want to kick things off today by stealing a slide from Ryan's talk at Reactathon. And as you're going to see, I'm going to remix the slide afterwards as well. And what a great slide, and what a great segue from Arisa's talk, because what Remix did for us, it raised the bar in terms of what we can achieve with our UI and UX, and also what we must now achieve, because we can provide great experiences in the same time or less that we did before to provide a worse one. And in that spirit, I want us to think about our forms experience and what we need to do to provide a great form UI and UX. And as an example, we're going to use a hotel reservation form, very simple one, nothing fancy, but I want you to think for a second, what does this form need to do to provide a great UI and UX? And I'm going to share with you my take on the 10 things this form needs to have. Of course, we could have a list of 100 things that a great form UI UX could have, but those are the 10 things I believe we must do nowadays. And here's our to-do list for implementing this form. This form needs to make the reservation, of course, needs to store the data so when people check in at the hotel, they are expected. It needs to redirect us when successful to a thank you page or a confirmation, whatever. But to achieve that, we need to coerce form data into structured data like numbers, dates, whatever. And form data only speaks strings, almost. We also need to validate on the server, make sure we only store valid reservations. And I'm going to argue that we need to validate on the client as well, because if the user is on a slow internet, and they have to wait for the entire round trip between client, server, and back, just to know that they didn't fill a required input, it wouldn't be a good experience. We need pending UI just to let them know that we are submitting the form. The form needs to be accessible to everyone with screen readers and all. We need to focus on the first input with error whenever we have an error. And also, we need to do it for server-side errors. For example, if I submit a login page and I get back from the server a sign-up page, for example, and I get back email already taken, I should focus the email field. And last, just as a way for us to think about the small things that matter when building UIs, a small example, when I click the label, it should focus the input. Most of you must know that if you add an ID to the input, it will take care of it. But a small example. And now it's time for us to get to work. We're going to start by building from scratch all this functionality, but I'm not going to walk you through the code today. If you access this link, you get the full code and running examples for all the steps of the way. So feel free to play with it or play with it afterwards, of course. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build that form UI in a quick and dirty version. And that version has no validation whatsoever. So you submit the form and pray for a happy path, right? 59 lines of code for the quick and dirty version from scratch. But we are making the reservation, for the happy paths at least, We are redirecting on success, and because it was such a low-hanging fruit, we are also clicking the label with focus input. Next, we're going to use Zod, which is a library built by Colin McDonald, who's there. So shout out to Colin. And Zod is a great parser that will parse our form data, our input actually, and return typed data if successful and a structure error if not. So we build server validations with Zod, and we end up with 88 lines of code so far. But we lost the make the reservation because now it fails every time because we're not coercing form data yet. So when we coerce form data, for this case, we end up with 92 lines of code. But now we're halfway through our to-do list. We need 5 out of 10. Next, we're going to use yet another friend of ours, React Hook Form, to add client-side validations. React Hook Form is a great library that integrates really well with Zod. So we will just pass the same thing we use for server validations to React Hook Form, and we'll get 114 lines of code, but validations on the client and focusing on client-side errors because React Hook Form does that for us out of the box. Next, this is beautiful. We were at 114, right? With 4 extra lines of code, we have pending UI. Never before Remix, I was able to do this with 4 lines of code, and I was verbose in my code. I could have done it with 2. Then we have 2 things left, accessibility and focus on server-side error. Accessibility takes a lot of lines. So we end up with 190 lines of code, but we are providing a good experience for screen readers, like errors, invalid fields, required fields, all the best practices for accessibility, and we are at 190 at the moment. Last, we're gonna, I don't know if David K is here, but yeah, we're gonna use effect, unfortunately, and focus on server-side error, at this example at least, and end up with 215 lines of code. And we're done. Congrats. We have a great form UX built from scratch, right? Because we had Zod, we had Remix, we had React Hook Form, and so and so. And now I want to introduce you to Remix Forms. Remix Forms is a full stack form library that helps us make the whole round trip between client, server, and back with all these features we discussed. I'm not going to walk you through the code in detail right now. You can check the link below at all times. But basically, the first thing we do is we create a Zod schema for our form. And a Zod schema is like city. We have 3 options of city there. You have dates. We have numbers. And a few of the numbers must be positive. We have an optional string, etc. Next, we're going to use yet another library that we created. It's called Remix Domain. Yet another library whose creators are here. Let's see, Diogo and Guga are there. And Remix Domains will help us keep our business logic separate from our loaders and actions. And it's a dependency for Remix Forms. That's why we're looking at it. Using Remix domains, we're going to create what we call a domain function, which is basically our mutation of data. And we're going to, just as a joke here, if someone asks for too many towels on the special request, we're going to throw an error. But if they don't, we're going to store the data. It's a little bit, the contrast is not very good, but instead of console log, we would save the data in a database or something. And then we're going to build our action in Remix. And with Remix forms, all we have to do is call this one function called form action, pass the request, the schema, the mutation, which is the domain function we just created, and a path for when we're successful. And it will take care of the whole backend for us, just this. Last, we're gonna add one line to our route component. That form there is not remix, it's remix forms, right? And that one line will get us to an auto-generated form with just 32 lines of code. And it does it all for us and more. All the items we were expected, and a few more, but our form looks like this. Not exactly what we wanted, right? So with a few extra lines of code, we can pass children to form and wrap some fields in divs and end up with our beautiful original layout again. And that leads us to 52 lines of code to provide the same experience we had before. 52 lines of code, it's 24% of our original from scratch 215 lines, 4 times less. And it's even fewer lines than our quick and dirty, no validation whatsoever, pray for a happy path version. So we end up with, again, less code, better UX, right? Thank you. And thank you, Ryan, for giving me the right to use this quote. But now I want to talk a little bit about less code, better DX, because our developer experience is at least as important as the user experience. Otherwise, developers will get tired of building it all, and they just won't build the great UX we want. One of the things we have that's so powerful with Remix Forms is that the customization API is powerful, flexible, yet it uses convention over configuration at all times. So if you don't want to customize something, you don't need to. But there's another aspect of this, which is the script type safety goes from end to end. And I'm going to show you a slide here where we experience that. Check out on the right, we have our field. And when I'm typing the name of the field, I got autocomplete for all the fields we have because we used Zod and Remix domains for that. And if I change the name of a field on our backend, this is our server function, check out what happens on the right. We got an error there. You have no idea how many times while building the from scratch version that you guys have access to at the link, how many times I misspelled a field name and only found out when running the software and had to come back and fix a typo, that if I was using Remix Forms, I wouldn't have this problem at all. So less code, better DX as well. And to top it off, I just want to show you another thing to keep on the trend of disabling JS. That's a common thread here today. Let's see what happens if we disable the JS on our form. This is the custom layout, 52 line of code example. I'm disabling JS, and I'm going to also use a very slow 3G connection. Now pay attention, I'm going to make a mistake here to generate an error. I'm going to ask for 0 bedrooms and see what happens. Pay attention, we're connecting to the server, making the round trip without JS. Did you see the focus there? how the hell did you do this? If you want to find out about this, you please come talk to me and the guys, and we'll tell the secret. But what's more important to me is to talk about how incredibly grateful I am for Remix, because Remix made us, I don't know, something that we had to cross a huge bridge between client and server. The chasm, the network chasm was there, and now the chasm feels like just something we can skip over and do something like this. It's not that, just like you guys say, it's not disabling JS that matters, it's the fact that we have progressive enhancement for the times when JS is not working. That's only possible because Remix made this magic for us. So thank you, and let's chat